Welcome to the Brothers and Influence podcast, where we stand to encourage, inspire, and add value in the areas of life, leadership, and community. I'm your host, Ian Williams.
And I'm Sherrod Ledet.
And I'm Shawsay Price, and together we are the Brothers.
And we are privileged to bring you a special guest who's going to bring the influence. Let's get it.
And our special guest today is Mr. Christopher Bartley. That's who we have in the building. Yes, sir. So let's give a little background on Mr. Christopher. So Christopher is a senior user experience design educator for future designers and business storytelling coach for founders and executives. His experience has allowed him to work with some notable startups and firms, including Springer Publishing, Boston Consulting Group, Siemens Energy, Thermobrand, FreshBooks, and others. Christopher believes that there are three types of stories in business: the stories you tell yourself, the stories you tell your company, and the stories you tell your clients. I'm going to say that one more time. He believes that there are three types of stories in business: the stories you tell yourself, the stories you tell your company, and the stories you tell your clients. He notes that these personal, executive, and brand stories can increase clarity, persuasion, and buy-in for leaders who care about their customers, teams, and organizations. Man. So I'm gonna jump this off with this quick question, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Bartley.
Yes, sir.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, one of my core values is mastery, right? So I have three main ones, and I'm even in the process of revising what they are. But mastery is one of the top three, maybe four. And the thing right now that does keep me up is wanting to do so well, like be so well at my job that it's undeniable. You know, there's this book, I haven't even fully read the book, but So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And when I think about being so good at your craft that when people hear your name or when they need a particular service or whatever it is, a solution that needs to be solved, you're top of mind. And that keeps me up, man. That keeps me up at night. It's a gift and a curse, right? The desire to want to be the best. And then also to give yourself room for mistakes, room for imperfection. I mean, we're naturally flawed, right? No one does anything perfect, not even the best athlete or musician. And even when they do, those imperfections are turned into something that other people want to emulate, right? It's crazy. So with that being said, I really do have this desire. It's a deep desire to be the best. And because of that, I have to give myself grace when I feel like I have fallen short, or when I have, like when the ball is dropped, and to just let it go and have the courage to wake up and start again tomorrow.
So just hearing a little bit of what you were saying, would this be a statement if one said that I am on a journey, or on my journey, I know that I am striving to be perfectly imperfect, right? Perfectly imperfect, because as you said, we all fall short, right? That's a fact. If you're that Absolutely. Individual that's standing before people and saying that, hey, I've done it, I haven't failed, I haven't done anything, you're actually lying to yourself, right? At that point, because for you to be great at what you do, you've had to come across some obstacles along the way that made you who you are today, right?
That's right. That's it. That's it.
So, man, that's all. So when I first met you, I came across your storytelling, right? Storytelling. I think, and what was the 7? Don't let me get it wrong. 7 points.
Yeah. The 7-point storytelling framework. Man. Just 7 steps, 7 stages.
Yeah, 7 steps. And just because you help people craft their stories, right? Because I think for you to be effective in anything you do, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, right, you need to be able to tell a story about who you are and what you and how you do what you do, right?
Absolutely.
So can we dive into the importance of that a little bit from your perspective, for the individual just saying, because some people say they don't got a story, but everyone has a story, right?
Everyone, even if you aren't writing your story, someone is writing it for you. And for those of you who have more of a spiritual, even of a religious perspective in how you view life, many times that story is being co-written by the person who you believe has designed you, who's created you, right? Okay. So if you don't have a story, or if you believe you don't have a story, then that's a story. Not believing you have a story is still a story, right? Because you're telling yourself and even others that the path that you're going on, or the meaning even of what you're doing, really is not going to amount to much. But that is also a story. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. I think that if we were to strip away just for a second characters, which in this case we would be the character, we would be the protagonist of our story. So you strip away the heroes, you strip away everything, and just look at the structure itself. There's an intro, you were born. There's a middle, you live in life. There's an end, you die. That is the core components of what a story has. It's within a particular time frame, a duration where something is introduced, something happens, there's some conflict in the middle, and then it's resolved, or maybe it's not. So for those who don't believe that they have a story, I would say the first thing that you would have to go through is this rethinking that you actually have purpose and meaning in the life that you were given. Like, you were here for a reason. And by putting that into your psyche, the next question is, okay, so if I'm here for a reason, what is it? Then the journey begins. Many people, Shate, don't they stop just before the call to adventure is given to them. And maybe it's been given to them, but they don't even recognize it. So they refuse it over and over and over. It's like, that's not for me. Oh, I could never do that. Oh, who am I? I'm insignificant. And so their story ends, which is a story in itself.
Awesome. Awesome. You gotta ask, you gotta be able to answer that question, right? If you're in denial, you can't move forward. You're living this life, and a lot of times everyone else is writing your story.
Absolutely.
And I'm a witness to that. You know, I made some decisions in my life whereas I thought I was writing my story, but the decisions I made, everyone else was directing, what I was doing, because I was following the leader, right? Following the leader. And like you said, for me, myself, once I came to that epiphany that, guess what? I do have a story. I do have meaning. There is a purpose for me being here. I was able to transition out of I would say off of that street, that street of denial, and that street of confusion, because I didn't know where I was going, and get on that street of direction.
Yes. Sorry to cut you off. And you can always change your story, for good or for bad, but you can always change it. You have the power to change the trajectory, to write the next chapter of what you want that to be. You are never out of control of how it is being authored. Now, you aren't in control of the elements that come up, the obstacles, right? We can't control those things just as much as we can't control how imperfect we are. But man, the choices that we make and how we choose to navigate through it, or overcome it, or to rethink it, to even reinvent ourselves. You have that power, man.
Yeah, when you said that about the choice, I don't remember what type of books they were, but when growing up, it was they had these books that when you get to an end of a chapter, it'll ask you if you want this to happen, go to this page. That made me think about that. And I think
yes. I had a friend, I think we just brought it up. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Is it a series of unfortunate events? I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
I had a colleague just
but I do remember
that
the books, there was books like that. So it can end quick. It can have you go to the back of the book, then come back to the front of the book, right?
Yeah.
but you kind of was writing that story. There was
Right.
often different type of endings based on where you said, and we feel like that sometimes. Everyone has watched a movie and been like, man, this would have happened, maybe this,
Oh,
right?
man.
You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah. Yeah.
But when we apply that to our life, man, it's so fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people mistake that it's about being confident. You just have to make that decision. You know what? I'm going to write my story. I'm going to change the outcome of where I'm going. I don't have to be like my dad, who wasn't nothing, or my father or my mother or whoever disappointed me in my life. You don't have to be like those individuals.
Absolutely.
That was great. That was great, bro.
Absolutely.
So being that you're a storyteller, do you have a favorite quote? And if you do, how has that quote impacted you to where you are today?
Wow. Yeah. So I reference movies quite a bit, and it's so funny because even though I reference many of these movies, I don't remember lines from all of them. Many times my memory is I remember the impressions of what those things are, and so my mind can kind of put it together. But there is a particular movie, Gattaca. I know this is going to sound random. Remember that movie way back in the day? I think it's like 97. This was around the time where, the Matrix came a little bit later. So this is like that sci-fi era towards the 2000s, right? The Y2K era. So we're looking at like all kinds of things. This particular movie was about how the world was now becoming genetically, there was genetic genocide, I believe the word is, or like separation, segregation, where you had people who were already predisposed for weaker bodies genetically were put in one category for work, for careers, for everything, for life. And then those who were genetically superior had different jobs. And so there were two brothers, Vincent and Anton. I believe they might have been twins, but if not, close in age. One was genetically superior than the other. So one lived one life and the other one lived another life. But the one that was less superior in his genetics always had this dream for going out to outer space, going to the moon or wherever it was, right? But you couldn't do that. That wasn't the kind of job that you had if you weren't genetically superior. So anyway, movie fast forwards, and when they were younger, they did a race for who could swim the fastest, to make it from one shore to the next. And Anton, the less genetically superior, the genetically inferior brother, he won. He made it. And so now, as time passes, they find out, meet up with each other again. There's a whole long story behind that. And they decide to do the same thing. Sometimes when you meet people, they'll take you back to your past, And so it was like, yo, you think you better than me? Let's go. So they go to the same spot, swimming like they did when they were kids. And as they're going, they're going. Anton is ahead again, and Vincent, the genetically superior brother, the one who should be faster, the one who should be stronger, the one who should hold his breath longer, is just about to drown. And so Anton swims back to grab his brother, and he's like, how did you do it? After all this time, how did you beat me? And Anton said, you want to know how I did it? Here's how I did it. I swam with nothing for the swim back. And I was like, wow, okay. I swam with nothing left to go back. Pretty sure I butchered the quote, but the point is he put everything on the line to get to the other side. So there was no, and you and I both know this. When we went through our do or die season of being solopreneurs, now I think we're in a different position now, right? We're in a different position now. We're able to have positions that are able to give us that stability. So it's a little bit less pressure. So like, if I don't get this client, I don't make this project, I am not going to make it. But when we had that keen instinct, not that we don't still have it, but circumstances have changed a little bit. We said, if we stop in the middle of this ocean, there's no way we won't eat. So we put everything that we had into it to cross the other side. A few things with that quote. The first one is to leave it all out on the table. We've heard that saying before, right? Yeah. But for a brother who is genetically inferior, to beat the one who was physically stronger, faster, maybe even more intelligent, means that it had nothing to do with those things, but everything to do with what he believed. So listen, man, that's one of the quotes that stands out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as an entrepreneur, right, you have to have that type of mindset. And
absolutely,
eventually, right? Sometimes people they're in it, just running the race and trying to make it, and but eventually, if you don't get across that line to that point, you're gonna always be trying to do something, always be trying to do the next thing, always be trying to be successful or look good in someone else's eyes. And that is awesome. I'm kind of reminded of it's slipping my mind with the scripture, but Paul, he was saying, he said, he was talking about he presses on towards the rock, forgetting those things that are behind him, right? And I often tell people with that scripture, that doesn't mean, like, if I'm driving down the street, that don't mean I can't look in the rearview mirror, but I'm going straight and I know I'm going to take a turn, right?
That's right.
And that's what Paul's telling. He's saying, I have a mission. Right. So I'm on this mission. So I can't focus. Like I like to tell people, you can't focus on those things behind you. They're there. Yeah. They're part of who you are. They're part of your history, but they don't have to be you, right? And I've said it before, whether it's a father that was in your life, right? Whether it was someone that broke your heart, right? Whether it was someone that did you wrong, right? You don't have to focus on those things in your life. You can continue to press on, because we all have a mission. We have a destiny. And it's up to us to grab hold of it, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, well said.
And that was I'm gonna have to go back and check. I know I've seen it before, but I'm gonna most definitely have to check that movie out, right?
When you get older, you get older and you start to see movies where you're a little younger, maybe adolescence, and now that you're older and you look back and you realize there's so many nuggets, and even the plot is different now too, being an adult. We're not just looking at the sci-fi, the effects or whatever. Now it's really about the story.
Yeah. I think people always, like, a lot of people have their favorite movies, and I believe that if you have a favorite movie, one of the key things to that being that to you is you're always learning something new, right? You're always seeing something you didn't catch the last time. Yeah. Right? Because how many movies have you seen when they pulled out a 45, but then it was a revolver, right? You're like, what the heck? You didn't see it at first because you're so excited of the movie. But later on, the more you watch it, you begin to see these little bitty things that aren't there. So absolutely. The Brothers Influence podcast, we believe in that community is important, leadership important, and life is important. Those three aspects of who we are, right? They play themselves up on us. So when you think about brothers and influence, what does that mean to you?
That's a good question. So when I think of brothers, I don't just think about siblings, right? Familial relationship. I think of the connection. I'll use the word relationship again between African American males. Like when I think of brothers, especially in the context, not just with the podcast, but typically when, hey bro, what's good? Or, and many times now it's an interracial colloquial term now, it's bros just saying, bros also. So I think at the same time, the root of it though, like when we think about who we used to call brothers in our community and culture, was really those who we could trust. So that's a huge piece of it. Those who we could rely on, those who, if we needed anything, that goes back to the reliability, or vice versa. We know that we can pick up the phone, or we can dial the number and they'll pick up. I also think of sacrifice, because there's one thing, trust and reliability, but a lot of that comes with us having to give up something in order to sustain some of those connections. So that's the brothers piece. Now, the influence side is, if we want to connect the two together, man, every person, even within our circle, has a level of influence. So there is influence within the brotherhood, right? Just within the connections that we sustain. Listen, when I got the email, I know it was part of it was like an auto message, but I was like, yo, I gotta show up. And even today I had to reschedule, but I didn't put the day off. I was like, no, there's got to be a time. And I looked, I was like, oh, okay, cool. We can actually move it up a little bit earlier, because there is that sense of, man, if it was the other way around, Shante would do the same thing for me. Now, of course, that's not the only reason why we do those things. I'm gonna only do it because then that's conditional, right? There's that conditional connection versus an unconditional. Whether or not he does, I'm gonna show up for him. So I think of it in that way, and we have this inner circle of influence where we influence each other, iron sharpening iron. We level up amongst each other. We might even have healthy competition, but then there's an outside when you're talking about community, where now as brothers within, how do we impact those without? And all of our spheres of influence are different. Like mine might be smaller than yours, and yours might be greater than someone else's. And with that, we are also comfortable in how and who we connect with and impact. So I think of these two things, man. On the brother side, there's trust, there's sacrifice. On the influence side, there's impact. There's resonance, even, because there has to be some sort of reverberating connection to even make an influence on somebody, in their lives, for them to believe. So honestly, bro, if the trust don't really work within the circle, we probably won't make as big of an impact to those who don't even know who we are, and we call them to trust us, right? So yes, when I think of that, man, those are the things that come to mind.
Has to start in that inner circle first. And when you was talking about influence, it's funny. I thought back to my I had this brother I was close to when I was in prison, and I would ask him, man, bro, just interview me, right? And I was looking at some of these papers, I still have them, and he would just ask me questions, and we would talk, right? And he would go back and do his thing, just like when I met you, right? Same type of a scenario. And it just, those times brought life to me, because I know there was, for the most part, what it was when I was asking that question, it was like, I just feel like I'm stuck. And every time, every time he would come back with his, I think the last time it was probably like 4 or 5 pages. It was just revelation, right? Wow. Letting me know that, guess what? I am on the right track. Sometimes we get discouraged, right? And things like that. So when I came and you did my story, it was like a reliving of that, right? Because I know I have a story. That's what, and I don't remember if you remember me saying that. I know I have one, but the issue is, how do I tell it, right? Because people are because people are always telling me, man, you got a story, but it isn't. It wasn't something written down, right? It was just that I was just being honest with who I was at those moments, and it reverberated with those people, right? But sooner or later, if you say, especially if you're in this, if you say you want to speak to people and you want to teach people and train people, you got to have something concrete, right? You got to be able to tell your story consistently, so that when your story's told, someone that may not even heard from you for a while, they think of me, right? They think of you, right? No matter how the story is told, and we've even heard or read about people that we've never heard of, but the person that's telling their story now and writing these books, they're reminded of that one individual that's spoken to their life, right?
Put in the acknowledgement section of the book, right?
The person that wasn't necessarily successful, didn't necessarily have all the accolades, but if it wasn't for that individual, right? And because I remember a story of a guy, he was a doctor, and he told the story of this lady that when she died, all these, I believe she was a teacher, but all these kids, all these grown-ups, professionals came back and were telling the story about how they sent her to college. No one knew. Wow. But she sacrificed part of her life to send all these kids to college, and they were doctors and lawyers, and right. But until she died, not even some of her kids know. That was what was awesome. Her kids didn't even know that she had took the initiative to send these several children to college. And when they came back and were able to tell their stories, it changed that whole atmosphere, right? Because guess what? She left a legacy that no one was aware of.
What's I mean, of course, I kind of know the answer, but what's more difficult to accept or to embrace? The fact that you've left a legacy that's acknowledged, or a legacy that no one knows about?
And you said, what's more? Say it again. Ask the question.
Difficult to embrace. If you were to leave a legacy that was acknowledged, like people knew, or there was a legacy that was left, but nobody has no idea. I know there are a lot of altruistic people out there who are going to be like, oh, it doesn't matter as long as I make difference in the world. Nobody needs to know what the legacy is. But I don't know. When I think about that, I kind of lean on the side of, they got to know something about the source of where that legacy came from, because there's a story in that, and not just the fruit that has come from that.
Yeah, and I think just like, I believe that a true legacy is outside of that, going back to the inner circle thing, right? So children, wife, brother, sister, that inner, because your family's going to remember you. They're going to remember you one way or another, for the good or the bad.
That talk now. You talking that talk now.
You remember you.
You stepping on some toes now.
When you talk about legacy, like I can go down the line of big pastors that died without anyone in place.
Wow.
Yeah, people remember who they are, but did they really leave a legacy if you die without leaving someone in charge? Jesus didn't just die, right? He left some people in charge, right? So he could continually be alive, and people talk about him to this day, right? Yeah. For the good or for the bad, right? Someone's talking about this Jesus, one way or another. And so that's why I believe it has to, if it doesn't go outside of that, it's not really a legacy. And I think I think that kind of gets back to what you're saying. The legacy has to be outside of your inner circle for it to be impactful. Because your loved ones are always going to remember you for the good or for the bad, right? And because I'm just like me, man. I can think of it. There's people I don't remember their names, but they've impacted me. So regardless of what goes on in my life, I remember those people. I have a teacher when I was in elementary school. I remember I think I had like toothache or something or whatever. She ended up taking me to her dentist to get that taken care of. Wow. She didn't even have to think about doing that.
Right.
And she did it. Picked me up,
man.
Took me. You see what I'm saying? I could never forget that.
It was a different world we lived in too back then.
Oh, no doubt, right?
Yeah, wow.
Nowadays, teacher ain't thinking about you when you step in the hallway. They ain't thinking about you no more, right? But she has legacy for me. Yeah. For that alone, she could have ended up being the person that killed a dozen people, right? To me personally, regardless of that, she did something positive, and I think that's where people. This cancel culture, I get it, but at the same time, just because you cancel something, you can't negate their legacy. A person that's done stuff positive, regardless of you canceling them for the negative. People can't canceling Kanye right now. You can't take away from his music legacy, regardless. And we can go down the line. We can name people that people in the world do not care anything about. But at the end of the day, when you look at their life, you still cannot negate the legacy they've had, those things they've imparted into the world. You may think you can think they're a rapist, you can think they're a woman beater, you can think they're all these things, and they might be true, but that does not negate the legacy they had, the good things they did, the money they've given.
It's interesting. I think that coming back to this idea of story, it's your life is the sum total, not just parts not just some of the chapters, maybe even some of the most notorious or the darkest chapters of your life, but it's all of them combined. And I always say that, as long as you're living, it's never too late either. Even if right now there might be somebody out there right now who's been canceled, not on the level of celebrity. Celebrity cancellations is
another thing.
You lose endorsement, you lose everything, right?
Money,
partnerships. Now, but it can be a little bit different, right? For the I don't want to call this average, but for the average individual, the person who doesn't have celebrity status, where the cancellation could be somebody writing you off. That doesn't mean that your story's over. Even if right now what you believe you've left behind, I've always said this, when I got closer to that age, now I'm over the hump, but the average age of the average lifespan in the US is 70 years. So halfway mark is 35. So, I used to think that the first half is you figuring out what you want to become. The second half is figuring out what you want to leave behind.
Yeah.
And when I hit that middle point, I was like, okay, now you're in that sweet spot of who you're becoming / become. And then also, what do you want? What will the legacy be? And now that I'm over the hump, I realized though, you can still choose to become somebody else. There's no timestamp. There's no expiration date on that. Will it be more difficult? Hey, listen, let me tell you something, Shante. I updated my Apple ID. And when I did, I didn't realize the trouble that comes with doing that. Everything needs to be reset. Everything had to be reset. Down to, and I didn't even realize this at the time, down to the card that's attached to it, the Apple card. Yeah. Everything's like, if you are doing away with this ID, and for many of you, you're looking to have a fresh start or reinvent or whatever it is. Some people, different numbers, whatever it is, and you're switching things, and with that comes a whole set of just sacrifice, inconveniences that come with doing away. So is it work? Yes, it's work. I can't even explain to you how many customer support calls I had during the time of that process, because there's stuff that I just couldn't figure out. And, and it was all because of doing away. And this is just for tech, doing away with old things. And I was like, man, everything was connected to this. And so that being said, even though it might be more difficult, especially when you're a little older, to change, and it doesn't even mean that you're changing because you're running away from something. I remember when I changed my number, that there are like 4 groups of people. The first group was like, oh, cool. All right, man. Yeah, I'll lock it in. Second group. And by the way, I think it's like 40%. I think 40% of I think it might be in the US, 30 or 40% change the number at least once every 2 years or something like that. It's a crazy number. And I was like, wow. Anyway, but the second group of people are like, okay, it's a little inconvenient, but I'll change it. Third group of people are like, what happened? Who are you running from?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this all of a sudden? And so with that, when change happens, even on a basic level as it is like a number, an email address, you're going to have different people, even in your own circle. We were talking about brotherhood, who may or may not understand or may never get the grasp or the change that you're trying to make. And many times it's not because you're trying to leave something, it's because you're wanting to become something. And even then we have to make a decision of whether or not we rock with the same people who can embrace the change or the people who really can't, but are they going to be obstacles now? We don't know, but that's all a part of the story. It's all a part of the story of what you choose to leave behind. And many times there's leaving behind and then there's leaving behind. So what are you going to leave behind to leave behind? Yeah.
And we the key thing is we got to do it. That's what people don't realize. We want to try to hold on to old things. And, I know people that, I see, because I'm from where I'm from, when I go up and visit and stuff, I see people, but I don't call them. I don't have conversations with them. Not that I don't like them or whatever, because every time I see them, it's like, hey, how you doing? But I've moved on, right? If they called me tomorrow, I would talk to them. But I've moved on, and that's part of growth, right?
That's
what
key.
do they say? What do they say? If you're the smartest person in the group, you're in trouble, right? You're in trouble.
Find another room. Yeah,
Because
find another group.
You need to keep elevating yourself. Oh man, brother, once again, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate your time today and dropping these jewels. Wrapping up with this legacy is awesome, because we all have one, whether we realize it or not. No matter where you are in your life today, if you die today, there is a legacy. Something will be said about you, right? And for the most part, our hope is that if we have children, if we have grandchildren, our hope is first and foremost is that they will remember us. But if we want to have true impact, we want others to remember us outside of that core group, and we all have something to leave in this life. So last question for you, brother. How can people reach out to you? How can they learn more about you in the Bartley group and what you have going on?
So right now, if they go to bartley.group, so that's the website, you will come across a landing page that actually deals with how to develop your own signature introduction. It's free. There's no cost to it. It's a 10 plus page workbook that you can kind of go through in a 20-minute training on just figuring out when you go to networking events or when you meet new people, one of the biggest questions that they ask is, so what do you do? And many times you either say too much or you don't say enough, or you say, but people don't really get it or understand it. So it's just one of those tools that you can put in to start to explaining and articulating your story in a succinct way to then open up the conversation. So it's helping people to understand a little bit about who you are that will get the conversation starting, but also for you to feel more confident in who you are as an individual, not just what you do, but also, well, who am I and what is the meaning that I bring to the table? So
awesome, man. Thank you, brother. Appreciate your time once again. Me and the brothers do appreciate you. And
I appreciate y'all too. This was a great way. This was a great timing, man. I appreciate being here as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys who've been rolling with us for this is season 3. Ask that you guys continue to support and go check out my brother who's brought some influence today, Mr. Christopher Bartley. Holla, fellas.